And we're studying Sri Sharda Devi and her divine play about the Divine Mother as incarnating as Sri Sharda Devi, God as Mother, and just learning from her. Last week we were talking about her losing her mother, uh, which, wow, that really seems to be in the air right now. There's a lot of mothers doing one of her harvests. It
Hmm.
seems like he takes a few away, takes a few out at a time. And, it's funny because every time it feels so personal when we lose somebody. It feels like, why? How can you do this to me? Kind of thing. Everybody feels that way. And yet this has happened to every single person who has ever lived. It's not personal at all. It's simply the cycle of life. You take birth, you take death with it. That's the way that it is. And Walton said something quite beautiful. He said that on that last day, he walked in and he'd been going to see his mother there at the hospital for a day or two, and the nurse at the desk was kind of short with him when he asks where you know how was his mother, with just an assumption on his part that she would know who he was or who she was. And she kind of quipped back, I don't know your mother. And he said, it had a little tone in it, but he says, I chose not to see that. I chose to see the absurdity of me expecting her to know who my mother was. And so I just laughed. And, I thought about that, and I told him, I said, that's the result of spiritual practice
Hmm.
right there. That's a direct fruit of doing your work. I said, you don't, I find that so encouraging because, in your situation, you had every right to take it wrongly, and you could feel justified, for not having to deal with one more thing. And yet in that, your natural response was the right one,
Hmm.
just to let it go. And just hearing his story, I talked to him for about 45 minutes before class today, and he's got another thing he's doing tonight. But just the beauty that he is turning his mother's death into is incredible to me. He's got pain, he's sharing that pain, and he wants to come and share in one of our classes. He wants to share with all of you, and I encouraged him. I thought that would be one of the most beautiful classes ever. It's such a poignant time in life, and such an experience by someone who really is doing their homework. Somebody who really is managing the passing of his mother in the most beautiful way I've seen. And I have no reason to be proud of him because that would suggest some kind of relationship there like that, and there isn't that kind of thing there. But in my heart of hearts, I stand up for him. I stand up and just really recognize uh, how beautiful it is to do the right thing, how beautiful it is to throw your faith in the right direction, and how beautiful even loss can be in that terrifying beauty sort of way. you know, in the midst of that suffering, because we were talking, and one of the things that came up is the fact that all the suffering around death comes because of love. It comes because of caring, and that's what gives it its beauty. That's what gives it its beauty. I remember a couple of years ago when I first got here, just seeing all of the turning leaves on the trees and just appreciating how beautiful that was, and having the thought at that time, that I'm looking at death. All those leaves are dying, and their last gasp to the universe is beauty, to give something in their final move that's beautiful. And I thought that's such a beautiful thing to see death in that way, and hopefully to approach death in that way. That in my last moment, that last that last gasp, hopefully there's a notion of giving with it, to give one last beautiful thing. to the world on our way out. You know, the color of our leaf. Maybe I'll get a, never mind. Anyway, moving on here to Shyama Sundari and her passing away in the last paragraph, the very last one we read, that Shyama Sundari breathed her last, and the Holy Mother, the Divine Mother, wept loudly. And we talked about that, you know, that this idea of being an avatar, being an incarnation, you know, the shortest scripture in the New Testament is Jesus wept. You know, and it was when his friend Lazarus died, and even knowing that he was going to bring him back to life, you know, within a few minutes, he still felt the pain of death. And we see Ramakrishna that way also. When his close ones died, he says that his heart felt like it had been a towel that had been wrung out. And then he says, the next day I came and saw clearly that it was just the removal of a pillowcase, and he was finished with his grieving. But that even for the great ones, this sadness is there because they allow themselves to attach, right? That's our symbol to us, that attachment isn't what's wrong. It's not having the power to detach when it's time. That is the problem. You know, our powers of attachment have to be matched by our powers of detachment. And we can only do that through discernment and understanding. But that, yes, to express sadness at a death, there's nothing unspiritual about that at all, because it's an expression of love. And to use anything as an occasion for an expression of love is beautiful. Just don't get caught, you know, keep that discernment alive, and accept things as they come with a brave disposition, and maybe even a tongue-in-cheek wink and a nudge at the situation, you know, knowing that this is a play and that all of these things depend on the conditions of minds, and that it's our game. It's the life that we're playing. So at 9 o'clock that morning, Shyama Sundari breathed her last, and Holy Mother wept loudly. Holy Mother's brothers, Bharata and Kali Kumar, carried their mother's body to the bank of the Amodar and cremated it there. The next day, Holy Mother asked her brothers to arrange their mother's Shraddha ceremony. A list of necessary items was prepared. Ashu left for Calcutta with that list. Swami Sharadananda arranged to get the articles and sent Ashu back to Jairambati within 3 days. The Shraddha ceremony was performed on a grand scale. Many people were fed with various dishes, including pumpkin curry, to fulfill Shyama Sundari's last wish. Moreover, various things were donated to needy people. I love that. That would be a beautiful way to remember somebody, is to go out and, you know, give food, give things to the needy, take care of other people. That's the best way to celebrate a life, is to have a moment of real giving when it's finished. I remember in my sannyas ceremony, doing a Shraddha ceremony, it took us like 6 hours to do. We were sitting outside in the sun, and there were so many things I learned about that. But just going through and doing this ceremony for, you know, I had to put a list together. It's kind of embarrassing to me, because we were asked to put a list of our relatives forward. You know, we had to put everybody on the list that we were going to do this Shraddha ceremony for. And you know, I didn't even know my grandmother's last names. You know, I got to my grandparents. I knew my parents. I knew their parents. But beyond that, I had no idea, except for maybe a first name and you know, maybe an ethnicity here and there where somebody lived. And these other, all my brothers that were taking that sannyas also, the Indian bros, boy, they had sheets. They were going back. Some of them were going back like 16 generations, just madly writing, you know, all of their relatives. And I was like, oh my God, boy, if you ever wanted to see a difference in culture, there's a glaring one, that I don't know anybody. I don't know any of my relatives. And here these guys are scribbling out names going back 16 generations. I'm like, goodness gracious. But yeah, this idea of really honoring people by remembering them, but then honoring them by serving others in their memory, I think is quite lovely. Holy Mother was exhausted by grief and the hard work that was required to manage the ceremony. It took her a month to recover. She was worn out physically. She felt empty. Her mother had been her support, her friend, and her guide. Shyama Sundari was a strong woman who endured many difficulties. She calmly faced poverty after her husband's death and brought up her children heroically. When she married Sharada to Ramakrishna, she suffered for a few years. Along with the other villagers, she initially thought Ramakrishna was insane. Later, of course, her joy knew no bounds when she saw people coming to Jairambati from all over the country to worship her daughter as a goddess. She also witnessed the master's prediction being fulfilled. Mother, your daughter will have so many children that her ears will burn from constantly being called mother. That's that beautiful boon that Thakur gave to the Divine Mother. She asked him about children, and he was like, "Oh, don't you worry. I'll have so many people calling you mother, it will burn your ears." And guess who that is? You well. Guess who that is? Shyama Sundari was a simple, sweet village woman. She was extremely fond of the master's disciples, and she was overjoyed when Holy Mother's disciples and devotees addressed her as Didima, or grandmother. Deeply religious, Shyama Sundari considered her household to consist of God and godly people. This is why she was blessed with giving birth to Holy Mother. In the same way that Mother Mary was blessed with giving birth to the Christ. That these women were women of real character, women of great hearts, who could raise a child, to manage their identity as the divine. I guess that the divine trusted these women, these two women, in this case, to raise them, to provide a home for them, to give them a start in life. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing here. And she considered her own family to consist of the divine, God, and then godly people. Those were her family. So it wasn't a matter just of relationship. And those are the eyes that we're all working to get. It's the master, Swami Prabhutananda's, one of the times we were talking about the monastic path versus the householder path. And he was saying that they both were really, in essence, the same. The task was the same in both of them. That what we accomplished through renunciation, the householder accomplishes through acceptance. That the monk pushes all relationships back until they're all just acquaintances. And then as he grows, he brings everybody back at the same rate, so that everyone ultimately becomes his mother, becomes his father, becomes his brother, his sister, so that the world becomes his family in that method. And he said for the householder, it's the same, that they also have to expand their ego. He talked in terms of expanding ego. And he said, that when you're a single person, you are your only concern in the world. And then you get married. And now your concern is your partner, and your partner's concern is you. And you both have to work at breaking the ego, or to increasing your sense of ego, to embrace both of you. That the give and take that requires teaches you to grow. And then comes the child, and the second child, and maybe even a third child. And with each child, that expansion of the ego has to get that much bigger. And your compromise in life has to become that much more richer. And then the children grow up, and then their friends become part of your household, and then their girlfriends and their partners and their children. And so the householder also is constantly expanding their circle of who is their family. And that's what we're all supposed to do in the end, is come to the point of realizing the world is my family, and I love them sincerely and authentically as such. And so we see that in the Divine Mother, in the way that she's living. And now, We know where she gets it from her very own mother, who passed that ideal down to her and helped her to thrive with that and made her a gift to all of us because of that love. You know, listening to Walton talk about his mother, there's such a beautiful love there for his mother. He served her for 15 years, you know, took care of her. And just to hear him talk about it, there's not a single hint of regret in that voice. There's such a mature and healthy and balanced love, even in the loss, that is amazing. And, you know, only love can do that. Only love, because he sits there and fully realizes that his mother's love is what the relationship always was, and that he still has that. And so he said, I don't even really see her as passing. He says, I just feel like she's accessible to me even now at just the thought about her. And I said, I mentioned, I said, that's so how it is. I mean, look at the people the world remembers, and they are the people who loved the most, you know? And so really, love is such an amazing, amazing possibility in us. That is our divine nature. That is the very center of what we are. And to learn to express that, to learn to get out of the way of that, what an amazing responsibility we have. What an amazing gift to be trusted with that, to expand that way, to grow that way. May it be so. Occasionally she had a glimpse of so this is talking about Shyama. Occasionally she had a glimpse of Holy Mother's divine personality. She once said, Child, who are you? Do I really know your true nature? Holy Mother replied with a show of annoyance, Who do you think I am? Do you see me with 4 arms? If I were not a human being, why should I have been born of your womb? That's unexpected. All right, another day, Shyama said to her, May I have a daughter like you in my next birth, and may my husband have plenty of money. It is so painful to bring up children in dire poverty. Why do you drag me in? Holy Mother replied. Do you mean to say that I should bring up your children again? All right, how do we make sense of that? Except Mother just being contrary there, or protecting her own mother from egoism, maybe. I don't have any idea. But it's rather unexpected to see that kind of directness coming from Mother toward her mother. Holy Mother was extremely devoted to her godly parents and served them with her heart and her soul. She later said about them, My father was a great devotee of Ramachandra and was extremely benevolent. My mother, oh, she also was very loving and compassionate. That is why I was born in this family, right? So there you have it. The God is born in a devoted and loving and compassionate family. So if you're wondering how to create a family, create it lovingly with compassion. My mother was like the goddess Lakshmi. She would collect and keep everything neatly, ready for Jagadatri Puja. She would say, Mine is a family of devotees and gods. Perhaps during the festival, my Sharada, Swami Chugunatitananda, will come, and Yogan, Swami Yogananda, may come. So she would preserve good rice and other things for the festival. She further said, As long as I am here, Brahman is also here. So is Vishnu, Shiva, and Jagadamba. When I go, they will also accompany me. Is it possible for you to take care of those deities and devotees? My home is the abode of gods and devotees. You see that vision, that view, that awareness of the divine presence everywhere. You know, that's what we're practicing toward, to see our own family as divine. Wow. To see each other as divine. You know, we are that family of gods and goddesses right now. My home is the abode of gods and devotees. Gopal Ma's passing. After losing her mother, Holy Mother returned to Calcutta in April of 1906 and lived in the same rented house at 2/1 Baghbazar Street. Among the women devotees of Ramakrishna, Yogin Ma, Golap Ma, and Gopal Ma were Holy Mother's trusted companions. Toward the end of her life, Gopal Ma was staying with Nivedita in her school, and Holy Mother regularly went to see her. One day, Gopal Ma said to her, Gopala, you have come. Look, you have sat on my lap all these days. Now you take me on your lap. The mother took Gopal Ma's head on her lap and caressed her affectionately. Shortly before Gopal Ma's death, Holy Mother went to her bedside. The saintly lady said feebly, Is it you, Gopala, who have come? And stretched out her hand. Holy Mother did not understand what she meant, but an attendant explained to her that Gopal Ma was looking upon her as Gopala and wanted to take the dust of her feet. Holy Mother was hesitant, but the attendant took the dust of the mother's feet with the corner of her cloth and put it on Gopal Ma's head. Holy Mother returned to her residence with a heavy heart. The end came at dawn on the 8th of July, 1906. Gopal Ma was carried to the Ganges, where she breathed her last, touching the holy water. A monk bent over her and whispered in her ear the words that a Hindu loves to hear at the last hour, Om Ganga Narayana, Om Ganga Narayana Brahma. Laughter and tears are part of human life. All human beings encounter happiness and misery. Holy Mother experienced the pain of separation from her dearest ones, her husband, her father, her uncle, her mother, her brother Apai, disciple Yogananda, companion Gopal Ma, and others. She continued her journey to fulfill her mission, holding her Yogamaya, Radhu, in her arms. So this is the way it is. This is the way it is. Life teaches us, according to Nachiketas, there is no other teacher like death. There is no other test of our renunciation. There's no greater test of our love. No greater test of our attachment and detachment.
So, Swamiji, she was, since Mava is divine incarnation, this was a play, right? That's why she cried. Otherwise, for her mother.
No, she cried because she hurt. She cried because a part of her, when she became a body, when she became a woman, she had the full experience of that. She had a heart, she had emotions, she had a life, she had memories, she had family. So all of that, all of the incarnations become fully human. They can remember, they can pull themselves out of it, but they don't escape. She could have escaped all of her suffering and just gone into that higher frame of reference. But her life was not about escaping that. Her life was about showing us what a divine life is. That love is beautiful, and that pain is part of that love, and that we just keep our eyes on the divine qualities when that challenge is there. But she didn't escape. She didn't run. Like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, there's a great song about him. That's called Up from the Grave He Arose. Up from the grave he arose. He arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with the saints serene. And then it talks about, he could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and to set him free, that he didn't have to go through that suffering on the cross. And that night in that Garden of Gethsemane, the night before he knew of his crucifixion, the night he was betrayed by Peter, he knew it was coming. And he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he used to go and spend his quiet time, just he and the divine. And he went to that garden that night and he just begged God. He said, if there's any way, Father, that you can make this happen some other way, if there's any way that you can pass this cup out of my hand, please do that. But if this must be done, let your will be done. I will endure this. And so he marches straight into it. And so he accepted it, and he suffered. He was killed in a very painful and slow way. And he accepted it. And even in that acceptance, he's hanging there in agony on the cross, right? And that one thief is making fun of him. The other one is saying, "How dare you make fun of him?" And Jesus turns to him and says, "This day you will be with me in paradise." So even then, he's giving grace. Even then, his heart is expanding. And that's when he gives John, the other disciple, gives him to his mother as her son. Her mother's sitting there weeping, and Jesus says to her, "Why are you weeping? Take your son." And he points to John, meaning, John was his closest disciple. And he gave John to his mother to be her new son. And that prayer on the cross, for everybody that was crucifying him and jeering at him and laughing and whatnot. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Forgive them, because it's all done in ignorance. And certainly that's our condition. So no, these great ones, they experience real life. They suffer, and they do it on purpose, because they want you to know that they require nothing of you that isn't required of themselves. That there's not a two-tiered system, that this is a divine experience, that living here is the practice of love. And with that practice of love in these conditions, it's the practice of endurance, the practice of detachment as well. And that's, what makes this beautiful. Death as a boundary is really what causes things to be beautiful. It's why you appreciate a flower. You appreciate a flower because it's so delicate, and it comes and then it's gone. And so when it comes, you appreciate it. You're excited about it, and then it's gone, and you let it go. That's part of the cycle. And so the world is like that. See your life like that. When the beauty comes, appreciate it. And when it goes, let it go and be free in it. There's no need to escape, no need to run for it. Stare the brute in the eye. Understand the nature of everything that happens as love. And if you can manage to find that in the worst of circumstances, you're doing it right. You're finding the way. Laughter and tears are a part of human life. All human beings encounter happiness and misery. Holy Mother experienced the pain of separation from her dearest ones, but she continued her journey to fulfill her mission, holding her Yogamaya Radhu in her arms. And that puts us on chapter 19 here, with the chapter called Radhu. And as many of you know, Radhu was kind of the means by which Holy Mother stayed connected to us. That it was through Radhu that she stayed in the world and didn't go with Thakur when he left. Because when he left her here, seemingly by herself, although she still got to talk with him a few times, but she said herself that she wanted to leave the world. She lost any interest in being here. And so Thakur gave her Radhu and said, "Take care of her. She will hold you there until the work is finished." Right? Salutations to the Divine Mother, who exists in all beings in the form of mercy. Salutations to her again and again. Well, that's a beautiful way to say it. Salutations to the Divine Mother, who exists in all beings in the form of mercy. What an amazing idea, that the Divine Mother exists in all beings in the form of mercy.
That is from the Chandi Maharaj.
Yes, it's beautiful. What a wonderful ideal. That now To feel mercy for someone is to feel the Divine Mother's presence. To feel that mercy even for yourself is to recognize that divine presence. I've just got a new thing to add to my list of ways of being reminded of the divine presence. As explained in chapter 18, Radhu was an incarnation of Yogamaya. Yogamaya is a special divine power that helps to fulfill the wishes of God. We find in the Bhagavata that Krishna called upon Yogamaya for his own birth. He asked Yogamaya to be born as a daughter of Yashoda, and he himself entered the womb of Devaki. Then Vasudeva exchanged the children. Krishna used Yogamaya again during the Raslila when he multiplied himself to dance with the gopis. Ramakrishna also used Yogamaya to fulfill his mission. So it's just that using Maya to fulfill the purpose of the divine. Yogamaya. It would seem that just being a yogi creates Yogamaya. Just having that spiritual perspective creates Yogamaya. Because God then uses everything in your life to train you. Uses everything in your life as scripture to bring you to your fullness, to your knowledge. One day at Dakshineshwar, Ramakrishna stood on the semicircular veranda and called out, "O Maya, please come." Gorima was with him. Astonished, she asked the master why he was summoning Maya. The master explained that the natural tendency of his mind was to soar to a very high realm, and it was hard to bring it down. He was calling for Maya so that his mind would stay in a lower plane, making it possible for him to help his disciples. Right? So that's Yogamaya right there. That's, this delusion is necessary for manifestation. If in the highest understandings, the highest knowings, everything is perfect. There is no movement, and without any movement, there can be no time. There can be no cause and effect, right? And so there's no manifestation at that highest level. And so down at this level where we exist and where we suffer and where we find ourselves separate and apart and alone, when Mother comes to these realms, she needs a weight around her ankles to drag her to these depths down here, to be here and to be able to reach us, to be able to touch us. And you think about that, what an amazing sacrifice that in and of itself is for love. That Thakur, who could be in divine bliss all the time, drinking of the ocean of Amrita, this divine nectar of ecstatic love, he could have sat there all the time. But he came all the way down, to where he experienced sickness, experienced death, experienced his body aging and dying, and the pain of his devotees and the suffering of his devotees. Yeah. Once when Holy Mother was asked what the master's main characteristic was, she replied, renunciation. Ramakrishna practiced and demonstrated fully the monastic ideal, but it was not possible for him to demonstrate the life of an ideal householder. Of course, he taught householders their duties, as am recorded in the Gospel. But his devotees always saw him as God intoxicated, as the Paramahamsa rather than the regular householder. To complete his mission, he urged Yogamaya in the form of Radhu in Holy Mother's life, so that Holy Mother could be an example to householders. Otherwise, people would say that Ramakrishna came only for monastics. Yeah, well, it's interesting that it's being talked about in this way. Because, he is the ideal householder, the householder without attachment, and instead of having his own kids, he adopted the world as his children, and Holy Mother the same, that she served everyone as her child. And they were married, and they supported each other, and they helped each other, and they did in fact demonstrate a perfect marriage, where God was kept at the center, and where service to God was what drove the relationship, and the recognition of God in each other was the point of the relationship. So yes, he did in fact show the ideal householder life, but he showed that any ideal life is not a life of entanglement. It's a life of perfect balance, a life of giving and knowing when to stop, and a life of caring and knowing when to withdraw, a life of compassion and knowing when to let go. So it's a householder life, but perhaps in an ideal life, it would be neither householder nor monastic. It would simply be a walk in pure love, regardless of the conditions and circumstances that it's happening in. And so this is what we're called to. We're not called to be perfect householders or perfect monks. We're called to be perfect beings, just like our divine beloved is perfect, right? And that will manifest in each one of us in its fullness at some point. And whatever we were when we got there, that's where and how it will happen. Even though Ramakrishna and Sharada Devi appeared in two different human forms, in essence, they were the same entity, right? This is something I've always really enjoyed. I drag Vivekananda in there as well, because they all three said about each other, am I different? Is there something separate here? And so I love this notion that God can incarnate as three. And really, if you stretch that, God incarnates as 7 billion. That it takes 7 billion stories of love in this world to describe one aspect of God, as it were. That every single one of our lives is an expression of love through ignorance, no doubt. But nonetheless, that ignorance even is love works through that ignorance. We fall in love with the people we choose to be partners with, and we fall in love with the things that we desire, and we believe the promises they make may be in error, but nonetheless we believe it, and we believe them to be fulfilling and beautiful and what we desire. And so every life is a song of love, is a line of love. And when you take 7 billions of those and put them in one vase, or you take the 7 million lines written by each life and put them in one book, you've got scripture. You've got a description of the divine in totality. Even though in any one strand you cannot perhaps see the perfection, when all of those strands come together in a single unity, then you get to understand how the universe can be perfect and unchanging in its essence, because it is but an expression of love. It is but an expression of being. And your life is that. And that spiritual life is not about changing your life. It's about understanding the nature of your life, so that you recognize that everything you're chasing is the love of God. And by recognizing that, by coming to a fuller knowledge of that, you stop chasing and you sit down and you turn around and enjoy. So you, like Vivekananda says, eventually you stop seeking God because you realize that was delusion, because God was never separate. And so you stop seeking him and you start seeing him or her in your life. And that's spiritual growth, not the changing of a life, but the changing of an understanding of what life is and what you are in that scenario. So Sri Ramakrishna and Sharada Devi were in essence the same entity. As on many occasions the Master said, Sharada is my Shakti, so also Holy Mother said, remember that the Master and I are the same. The scriptures say that Shakti and the upholder of Shakti are identical, just as fire and its power to burn. Yeah, and really the reason we see this imagined too is because of the senses that it comes through, It's like the bodies that the Master is presenting himself to, one in the divine feminine and one the divine masculine. We see them as two, but in fact it's the same divine power being manifested in both cases. I think everything resolves into that, ultimately. Radhu's important role as Yogamaya. When we observe the unending suffering that Radhu caused Holy Mother, we feel pained, yet we are indebted to her. Radhu helped Holy Mother keep her mind on the earthly plane for 20 years so that she could carry out her divine play in this world. It is a sight to see the Divine Mother behaving like a regular village girl, involved with her brothers' families and their children, and at the same time, initiating spiritual aspirants, giving sannyasa to young disciples, and guiding the monks of the Ramakrishna order. During the last 30 years of her life, she initiated and instructed hundreds of monastics and householders, and also demonstrated to them their respective ideals. Regarding Holy Mother, Sharadananda once remarked, "I have never seen in anyone else such an attachment, nor have I seen such detachment." You know, and this is that heart of a mother. You know, the mother could just so fully open her heart to people, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of their circumstances, and to see them as mother and to let go of everything. You know, she didn't see race at that turning point, or that period of time in India. You know, caste was everything. Caste could ruin your life, and breaking the caste rules could ruin your life. And Mother didn't hesitate to invite Nivedita into her home, to feed her with her own hands, to clean up her dishes afterwards. And not just Nivedita, but others, you know, other Muslims and people that, you know, people of lower caste. Mother never hesitated. And as she was raised as a village woman, you know, how do you explain that? She was raised in the midst of all of that, and still raised in the midst of all of that. She knew that there was a unity beyond it, underneath that kind of dismantled that whole structure. And in this day and age, you know, these times for all of us, for me in particular, I really feel it. There's a real necessity in learning this, and to not buy into this divisiveness that's being employed, you know, for political ends in our country right now. To not fall, you know, victim to that. Not to give in to hatred, not to give in to judgment, but to constantly, for us as devotees, to keep our eyes on the sameness, that divine essence in each one of us, and somehow to reach reconciliation through that, whether it's through forgiveness or mercy, or just simply seeing the divine, whatever it is in us, to really make that effort that our life is a very clear demonstration of love, and that we're detached and attached, loving deeply when we can and letting go when we can't. I've never seen anyone else with such attachment, nor have I seen such detachment. There may be another mystery behind Holy Mother's attachment for Radhu. Just as some seekers of worldly prosperity abandoned Ramakrishna when they found that he was suffering from cancer, so also some people stopped visiting Holy Mother when they saw that she was entangled with Radhu and her family. Thus, the master protected her from insincere worldly people. He used to say, "Let the boat be in the water, but not water in the boat. Let a spiritual aspirant live in the world, but let not worldliness enter him." Holy Mother is a living example of the Master's teaching. You know, this is one of the reasons. Do not judge. You know, judge not, lest ye be judged. It's like, because that criteria which you use to judge will be the same criteria that will be used to judge you. And this is Holy Mother's, one of her major teachings to us. You know, is not to see the faults of others. See your own faults. And that doesn't mean that you're not seeing other people's faults. What she's telling you there is other people's faults exist in you first. That's how you recognize them in others. And so to be aware of that, and have a sense of humility about it, so that our haughtiness, our judgmental attitudes, because Mother will raise you up. Mother will use you in this world. She wants to. And if we connect everything to our egoism, we can't be of value to that extent. We can't be used to that extent. And so to always recognize our own faults first and not to judge others and to act accordingly, to have that mercy, that divine mother inside, so that we'll have the strength to face the beast, to apologize when it's time to apologize, to ask forgiveness when it's time to ask forgiveness, to be willing to accept grace as we go forward in our lives like that. In her childhood, Radhu was a charming girl, and her simple, innocent nature attracted people. Holy Mother poured her love and affection upon her little niece. Radhu called her Aunt Ma, or Mother, and she addressed Shurabala, her biological mother, as Nidhi Ma, or Bald Mother, since she shaved her head, as was the custom for Hindu widows. Radhu herself was not greedy or demanding, but her mother was terribly jealous when Holy Mother gave presents to her brothers and other nieces. She wanted the mother to give everything to Radhu and told the girl, "My sister-in-law is generous to others. She is keeping nothing for you. Why should you live with her? Come away to my house." Annoyed, Radhu would scold her mother, and she avoided her. Holy Mother fulfilled all of Radhu's wants, and Radhu was happy. Holy Mother raised Radhu as her own daughter. She braided her hair, dressed her, fed her, and sent her to school. A woman devotee recorded in her reminiscences how Holy Mother made plans for Radhu's future. She says, "It was late in the morning. Radhu was getting ready to go to Christian missionary school of the neighborhood. Golap Ma said to the mother, 'Radhu is now a grown-up girl. Why should she go to school anymore?' She asked Radhu not to go to school, and Radhu began to cry. The mother said, 'She is not quite grown up. Let her go to school. She can do immense good to others if she gets an education and learns some useful arts at school. Through education, she will not only improve herself, but will be able to help others.' So Radhu was allowed to continue her schooling." There's some cute little beautiful pieces tucked in there, that our education isn't just for ourselves, not for our own success, that we will be able to not improve not only ourselves, but we'll be able to help others. So our value of ourself is just not in how we're going to make it through this life in great success, but how many we're going to help make through this life in great success. To have that, to constantly check that ideal inside, to keep our heart spreading. This is something I find a little dangerous about my own life, because I spend so much time alone here, to not let my world shrink down to me. And that's something that all of us have to really be aware of. Don't let your world shrink. Always look for opportunities of expansion. Always look for ways of sharing your love wider than what it is. There's a lot of stuff in here today that's really quite challenging for my own spiritual life. I think we're all together, but just to go through and think of our relationships, each one of them, and think about them in terms of the mercy of the Divine Mother. Think of them in the terms of not difference, but sameness, to see them as, as our own children, our own, to have our hearts extended like that. Even though it's challenging, because I know each one of us, we've got relationships in our lives that are challenging, that are difficult. Those are the ones that are the most beautiful to win at, quote, to say it in a weird way. Those are the ones, it's like, go for the hard bits, go for the difficult things. They cause the greatest growth. They cause the greatest change in us. And it's our nature to be changed like that. It's a freedom to be changed like that, even though from the ego perspective, it's like, oh God, I don't want to talk to that person. I don't like that person. It's their fault. All those things come to mind. But on the other side, after the resolution has been put forward and love has been expressed, there's a great relief at having done the right thing. There's a wonderful freedom in that expansion. And, we'll experience that for sure.